All right, everyone, well, had a chance to settle in a little bit and read some of the materials that we've had we've made available. It looks like some folks are still entering. And I know we have quite a few people online that have joined us. So first of all, my name is Abby Abel. I'm part of the Colfax BRT project team. I will be facilitating this evening along with my colleague, Emma Harrison, who will be facilitating on the virtually, virtual and many of our partners. So first of all, I want to thank all of you for coming out. I know that it's game 3 of the NBA finals. So hoping that we can catch at least the end of the game if we move through this. I wanted first, before we get into the meat of everything, I wanted to acknowledge our key partners. Actually, let me move back here for a second. If you haven't taken the poll, please do that. This is the QR code. We're going to be using some of your real-time feedback to help inform a panel discussion that we're going to be having here momentarily. Let me acknowledge some of our partners in the room. So David Pressinger here in the back is our city's transit director. John Stewart is the project's director, project director for East Colfax BRT, and Brian McLaren is the project manager. We also, as we always know, this project would not be possible without partnership from all of our collaboration from all of our partners, many of them represented here, the business improvement districts, the city of Aurora, RTD, FTA, CDOT, our outgoing and our incoming council members, and obviously our equity and our access partners. So thank you to all of our partners, many of whom, as I mentioned, are represented here today. So before we get into the agenda, let me just quickly acknowledge we were here. It feels like yesterday. Many of you are very familiar faces, right? We were here in April. And we heard a couple of things from all of you. 3 things come to mind. One is, give us some time up front to spend with the materials so that we can come to discussion informed. We hope that you've been able to spend time with materials, both here and all of the materials that we posted online. The transportation report, the transportation executive summary, and a series of videos that we're calling Colfax FAQS on the street, for those of you who prefer to listen as opposed to read. So hopefully you've been able to engage with some of those materials. The other thing we heard from you very clearly is what's in the transportation report. And so tonight we are here to talk about that, but we want to frame it in terms of future mobility with BRT. We'll talk about that in a moment. So the plan for this evening, we're going to spend less time presenting and more time discussing. We want to create as much time for that discussion as possible. So we're going to move through this quickly. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to forget where we were last time. So we're going to do a quick recap. What did we hear from all of you based on the survey that we sent out last time? What were some of those key results? We're going to share those with you. And then we're going to spend a little bit of time. John's going to take us through reminding everybody here in the room and those who are joining us online, why are we doing this project? What is the vision of the project? What's the purpose of it? What's the benefit? And for those of you who are new to the project, how is this thing going to work? So just spend a little bit of time on the fundamentals. Again, many of you have been involved for decades, many of you have not. And then we're going to jump into a panel. I will facilitate the panel. The cool thing is that the panel is going to be informed by real-time feedback that you provided in the poll. What is most important to you, depending really on your preferred mode. So we'll go through that a little bit, because we know that many of you in the room, you have different preferred modes. So moving through Colfax. We want to know what your priorities are vis-a-vis your preferred mode of moving through the corridor. And then we'll open up for discussion. And we have at least 40 to 45 minutes where we can just have open dialogue. And so we hope to have a really constructive and thoughtful conversation. I'll also note that we have, we'll have time at the end for those of you who want to stay to talk about the curbside access plan, and we'll get into that in a moment, but really talking about parking utilization, and the best usage of curb space with BRT. So a reminder why we're here today. We are here to talk about movement through the corridor with BRT. For those of you who prefer to drive, what's it going to look like with BRT? For those who take the bus, what does that mean? What can you expect? For those of you who walk, who ride, who roll, who use a wheelchair, what is it going to mean for you as members of this community moving through the corridor with BRT? We want to hit all facets of that tonight. Because again, as I mentioned, we know that you all have different preferences and you all use different roads with different frequency. So let's talk about this more holistically. Through a couple of housekeeping notes. As I mentioned, we're going to have lots of time for Q&A. For those in the room, I ask that you raise your hand. I will call on you. You'll have a minute at most to ask your question. For those of you who are joining us virtually, for those of us who are joining virtually, you'll be able to submit any questions via chat, and Emma will help facilitate that discussion as part of the Q&A, the open Q&A. And again, I ask that in the spirit of collaboration, in the spirit of moving this project forward, that we show respect to everyone in the room, and that we have a positive and constructive conversation. So with that, quickly, where did we leave off? Just so that you know, since April, we've had probably way more than 10 large community engagements, including some of the in-community engagements, the Mayfair Colfax Market we attended, the Facts Health and Resource Fair. We've had discussions with the community, with the task force, with the business improvement districts. More than 180 of you joined our last set of April workshops, which was pretty great. We heard from more than 400 of you in the survey that we put out, primarily regarding design, but also how you prefer to receive information. And we received over 700 comments. Quickly, and I'll just note, and we can put this in the chat, the summary of the survey is on the project website. So if you want to go question by question and see how the community responded, that is available to you on the project website, and Emma's going to put it in the chat. Here are the key kind of high-level things from that. One, you care a lot about safety, comfort, and accessibility as it relates to BRT stations. Make that the priority. Let's not forget about pedestrian and the cyclist experience. That's a key piece of this. And just to note, just because this is a bus project, Dottie always thinks about investing with all those in mind. Ensure that the public art, we talked about the experience that you wish to have with public art along the corridor. And as a reminder, this is a huge opportunity for the city. More than $1.5 million is going to go to public art. You want to see that public art reflect the character and the history, primarily, of the community. You love the digital communication channel. You often go to the website, you look at our emails to receive information. You ask that we engage more in grassroots community events, and also perhaps utilize the media a bit more. So hopefully you will be seeing more of that. Sort of speaking to the content of the presentation or the discussion tonight, you want us to talk about the benefits of the project, the traffic and the safety impacts of small business support. And finally, we heard a lot, get the project done. Make it happen. Recurrently. Let me just tell you, Arts and Venues was here. They're a partner of ours on the project, a big partner of ours. And so they talked a lot about the art selection committee last time. We wanted to give you an update on that. The applications closed as of May 12th, and hopefully some of you in the room applied to be on that selection committee. They received more than 30 applications, which is pretty great. And the applicants really represented a diverse mix of backgrounds and abilities. The timeline is this. In this summer, the panel will be approved by the Cultural Commission. There'll be an orientation meeting sometime in the fall timeframe, and then the selection process will be sort of in the next 6 to 9 months. So hopefully that helps answer where we were and to give you an update on some of what we talked about at our last meeting. And with that, I'd love to turn it over to John to talk about the project and how we're doing it.
Hey everybody, thanks for coming in. So yeah, let's get into it. Why are we doing the Colfax BRT project? So the first thing is the city's been working very hard for a number of years to figure out what the people of the city want Denver to look like in the future. And the Dottie just recently wrapped up its planning process called Denver Moves Everyone 2050. And these are the key goals that came out of that planning process. And so what are these goals? One is mobility, and that's giving people more transportation options. Sure, you want to drive your car if you have a car, that's great. But we also don't want to forget about people that want to travel in a different. Safety is another important factor that has been determined to be a high priority for the voter of Denver and also for the city for planning purposes. And basically, things have been trending in the wrong direction, whereas traffic accidents, as far as injuries with pedestrians. Sustainability is another priority. What are we going to do to cut down on greenhouse gases? What are we going to do to be more sustainable in the future? And another priority is community. We've heard from everybody that we want to make the right of way a more inviting public space for people to want to be in. And the last is quality. And that speaks more about the state of good repair for our transportation system. And looking all of these goals through a lens of equity, of being able to provide and meet these goals equally for everyone. So how does Colfax BRT, how does that line up with those goals that we laid out? And really, it's the project that hits all of those goals really well. It gives people more transportation options than they have right now. It also, it lays out a better community space. It activates the street, makes it more inviting for people to want to be in the street or along the street. Sorry. And so also I wanted to say that it gives, excuse me, there's a lot of let's see, I got lost here. Yeah, so anyway, there's a lot of ridership that goes along Colfax each day. And okay, now we're moving on to the perks and benefits. Okay. Yeah. Now let's just go ahead. Colfax BRT. So it provides more travel options for people to travel up and down Colfax. There's a lot of connections that people can make. You can travel by bus with the implementation of this project. It makes biking easier. It makes pedestrians, it makes it more friendly for pedestrians. It makes it easier to walk through the neighborhood. It also has economic benefits. It saves travel time. Of the bus rapid transit project. And okay, so has economic benefits. It provides more equitable access to transportation options for everybody. So people that don't have a car, it gives them an option to travel that's more economically advantageous for them. It enhances access to jobs and services. Also, there's a lot of environmental benefits. It reduces greenhouse gas emissions from vehicles. It improves air and noise quality, and it promotes greener streets. So it has, and Colfax BRT does a really good job of hitting all. It's been identified as a high priority for both the city and for Dottie. Took a survey of people with the community and asked them what they would like to see most from the implementation of a bus rapid transit project on Colfax. And the two most important things to them were better service and improved safety. Now, the Colfax bus rapid transit project hits both of those really, really well. That's why it was determined to move forward with this project. If we have bus headways going every 4.3 minutes, I mean, the bus is coming by your stop every 4.3 minutes during the day. And also it's improved safety. So the Colfax Avenue is in the eye injury network, been identified as being in that network for the city. And having a transit project promotes safety because traveling by bus is a safer way to travel than single. Here's a little reminder of what the project looks like. This is the scope of the project. It's in 3 different segments. So the yellow segment on the left, that's in the downtown area. That will be a side running bus in its own dedicated lane. And then starting at Broadway at Civic Center Station, that's when it starts going in the blue area here. That's when it goes to the center running bus right there. It'll be running in the center. So in the blue area, we'll be running in the center with bus stations in the center, dedicated bus rapid transit there. And then once we get to Yosemite to the orange area on the right, that's within the city of Aurora. Have its own bus priority lane, but it will still have a lot of the advantages that bus rapid transit has. All the way to I-225 in the board. So right now, the process is kind of the same place we were when we were back here in April. We're still working through the 60%. July, we're going to be really busy. We're going to be submitting our documents to the Federal Transit Administration to get our environmental licenses to start construction. We're going to be bringing on a construction manager who is going to help build the project. Contractor. Process for actually receiving that funding with FTA. So we're going to show that the project is ready for construction. Now, there's still a long way to go before we get to the actual starting. Construction. And do construction for about 2.5 years. Revenue operations for the bus line will start in January of 2020.
Thank you. And now we get to talk, now we're gonna get to the discussion. So I think, so I would like to invite our panelists up. And I will introduce you. So come on up and have a seat. And we'll talk a little bit, after I do some quick introductions. We'll share some of the poll results so you can see the priorities among the folks in the room. Like I said, for about 20 minutes, I'll ask some questions of the folks here on the panel. Then we'll open it up to all of the folks here. So you all have met John Stewart, who's the director of the district. To John's left is Stephen Reason. So Stephen is with the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure. He is the principal city planner. And Stephen's really been involved in this project, thinking about multi-modal. Kurt Upton is with Community Planning and Development. He's the principal city planner. We have the benefit of having Kurt in the room. Kurt has been involved in this project and also in neighborhood planning initiative with East Central Area Plans for years and brings a lot of referrals to this discussion. So we really appreciate Kurt being on the panel tonight. And Doug Monroe from RTD. Doug is the manager of corridor planning. So Doug thinks a lot about how the bus is going to operate, what the experience is going to be like from the bus. I know we've received a lot of questions from all of you about that. So Doug is here to answer some of those questions. And we have Charlie Alexander. Charlie and Nick Vanderhoff are part of the consultant team, and they've really been leading the transportation report, as well as the parking analysis. And so that they're here to really speak in depth about some of the materials that you have reviewed specific to the transportation. All right. So This is who we're gonna engage this evening, and before we do that, we wanted to use the feedback that we've received from all of you on the poll to better understand how we do that. Our delivery. So I'm gonna turn it back over to Emma to share some of the results, real live results.
Thanks, Abby. I'm gonna grab that wireless mic. So thank you all for filling out the survey at the beginning of the meeting. I'm gonna try to blow this up a little so you can see it better. Great. So the first question we asked you is, what best describes your relationship with the corridor? You live here, you work here, do you frequently visit the area? It looks like about 65% of you, 22% live here. And 26% of you, so 9 more, visit the area frequently. And a few of you work here, which is great. So that's our makeup in the room. This is awesome to see. The majority have reviewed the transportation report. 82% of you, so 22% who filled out the survey have reviewed those materials. Thank you. And here's where we ask, what mode do you most frequently use when you come to Colfax? So it looks like the majority in the room frequently use Colfax to drive, so via a car. So that's 19 of you, about 55%. The second most frequent mode looks to be bike or scooter, about 20% of you, followed by bus, about 14%, and then walk or use a wheelchair. Here's where we get into the specific priorities per mode. So question 4, this is our bus riders. So our bus riders, looks like the most important topics to them are benefits to bus riders, followed by bike access and safety, enhanced walking experience, and center running alignment. Our car drivers. So the most important topic to those of you who use your car in the room, traffic diversion to neighborhoods. So we'll make sure to speak on that just because that's the majority of you in the room, followed by benefits to bus riders and left turns from Colfax into neighborhoods. And thank you for submitting additional questions too. We'll get to as many of those as we can in the Q&A. Our bike and scooter riders, most important topics again, benefits to bus riders, enhanced walking experience, bike access and safety, center running alignment. So seeing some overlap here across modes. And lastly, those of you who walk through the corridor. The most important topics for you tonight are alignment to neighborhood plans, traffic diversion to parallel streets, and then there's a close tie for third here. It looks like benefits to bus riders, bike access, and enhanced walking experience. So I think some clear topics rose to the top there across all modes, and we'll make sure to address those.
I think what it does is two things. It tells you who's in the room, and it tells you that there's different priorities based on the music. So we'll pull this together so that we share this more broadly, but I think this really helps to inform the dialogue. So the first thing that comes to mind, because we're talking about a bus project, I'd love to start with what are the benefits to bus drivers? And who are some of those bus drivers? And so I'm going to start with Charlie, and then we'll get on some of those who prefer to drive their vehicles and other things. I'll also note that these topics were informed by. These are the topics that we've heard in the meeting. These are the topics that we've heard via questions on our project website. So this is not out of the blue. This is all being informed by you. So if we get the mic, the wireless mic, talk about what can we expect in terms of benefits to bus riders. We start with Charlie.
and then we can, other folks can go and add it.
Okay, this is working. Okay, is that it? This is bus rider. So, I'll talk about a couple. John might want to follow up on this, once I get through the dialogue here. The center running BRT is going to do a lot to improve travel time for buses now into the future, as well as reliability. And particularly making sure they've got their own dedicated space, making sure that buses aren't impeded by people, making turning movements or making parallel parking maneuvers. The sort of aggregate effect of the center running BRT over time is that, into the future, the buses could be delayed, without center running BRT by 30 minutes or more during peak hours. So you think about the impact that has on, the thousands of people who use the bus today and the growing ridership into the future. We expect that, and then found in the transportation analysis that was summarized in the report, that the center running BRT actually saves up to 30 minutes travel time between I-225 and downtown into the future. So significant travel time benefit and savings for bus riders. The other, in addition to the reliability of just knowing how long that trip is going to take and knowing the length of that trip is going to be consistent, whether you're taking it at an off-peak time, say, noon, or whether you're taking it during the peak hour itself. So there's a lot of benefit to that reliability for bus passengers. The last thing I'll mention here is John mentioned in the introduction, the frequency of buses every 4.3 minutes. The buses on Colfax are pretty frequent now between the 15 and the 15L, but the 15 and 15L operate at different frequencies. They have different stop locations. Can't get the 15L everywhere. Obviously, all the stops are served by the 15. The Colfax BRT will be a much more simplified delivery of that service. So everyone knows that if they want to catch a bus on Colfax, they can go to the nearest station on the corridor, and they will have a bus within 4.3 minutes of when they arrive at the station.
And I just want to follow up, Dave, with you for a moment and just follow up a little bit with safety, because we saw from the slide that John presented that sort of options, ability was the top priority. Safety was a secondary priority. So when we think about bus riders, what does it mean in terms of safety?
Yeah, that's a great question. So obviously the Colfax BRT project is a pretty significant change to the way that the street looks and functions. Some of the issues that we know to exist today on the corridor relate to the multiple lanes in each direction. We've heard a lot of concerns in these meetings before about just the speed at which people travel on Colfax. And by repurposing one of those lanes into a transit lane, we do expect that the top speeds on the corridor should come down quite a bit, which will be an overall improvement to safety. Just the number of lanes that people are crossing when they're crossing Colfax by foot, by going from 4 general purpose lanes down to 2 general purpose lanes, there's a lot less opportunity for conflict between people driving and people walking. And then some of the improvements to the sidewalk and the curb frontage, actually in some cases widening the sidewalk, shortening the crossing distance, introducing the median refuge islands at the station locations. All of that adds up to a pretty significant safety benefit. I think the transportation report or some of the other analysis said somewhere in the ballpark of a crash reduction on Colfax between 15 and 25% resulting from the project. And with what we anticipate of reduced speeds on the corridor, for crashes that do occur, less speed, less energy, less severity. As John mentioned, the aim with a project like this is to get this project off of the high injury network, and a lot of the project elements add up to that benefit.
Thank you. And just want to acknowledge that there's another, like, there's the experience on the bus itself. So I would like to just talk a little bit about with the BRT, what is that experience going to be like, or what is RTD doing to ensure safety?
Sure. So the stations that are being designed for the BRT are planned to have integrated safety security features in them. So they will have security cameras and emergency call boxes are planned to be located at each of the stations there. In addition, the rider experience is going to be a little bit different, somewhat similar to light rail. Where fare collection is going to be done off board. It's planned to be done off board the vehicle, so you'll purchase your fare at a ticket vending machine or on your phone before you board the vehicle. So in response to that, similar to how fares are enforced by light rail, it'll be roles of transit security officers or police officers to enforce fares on the vehicles. But at the same time, the driver will still be present on the vehicle, so there'll be that layer of security available on the vehicle should it there. And taking the fare enforcement away from the driver should create an added layer of safety as well. That's one of the main conflict points that you see on buses, especially is fare disputes between the driver and having that fare collection being done by fare enforcement done by security and the police to take that element of safety away as well. And I will add as well that RTD is in the process of transitioning away from a model of contracted security to more foreign police officers that are part of the transit police. So having that additional there rather than the transit security officers.
All right, given that the majority of the folks in the room prefer or frequently use their vehicle. Questions that we get, and I think is reflected in the survey tonight, is you're going to reduce the number of traffic lanes by 2. What is that going to mean for vehicles, both on Colfax and the big? Tell us more about traffic. So I'm going to turn it back over to Charlie to talk about what does BRT mean for vehicles moving through the corridor, and what does that mean for all of you who live within the corridor, in terms of traffic. Charlie, why don't you pick us up?
Sure. So, I think probably pretty obvious to everyone in the room here that repurposing a lane on Colfax means that some of the people who drive on Colfax today are going to choose a different street into the future. Generally speaking, that is what we found in the transportation analysis and the transportation report. I'll start with a summary statistic and then I'll try to put it into context a little bit. What we generally found in the transportation report is that people driving through the Colfax area will generally still be able to drive through the area with a lot of ease, particularly if you're traveling off peak or in the direction against rush hour traffic. So during those times of day or during those directions, the experience that you have in terms of how long it takes you to get from A to B will be relatively similar to what it is without the project. We did find that if you're that in the peak in the rush hour in the peak direction of traffic, there is that diversion effect of the project in the magnitude of 2 to 5 vehicles per minute on the different streets between 13th and 18th Avenue. And that when you look at the effect of what it means in terms of the shift of that traffic off of Colfax on travel time, that typically people who are traveling through the area are going to experience, in the peak direction, about a minute more of travel time per mile that they travel. That's by 2040. So that's, long off into the future. So a lot of these streets are carrying, I said, 2 to 5 more vehicles per minute. Many of these streets are carrying in the ballpark of 25 to 45 vehicles per minute now. So a little bit of eye of the beholder in terms of, is 2 to 5 vehicles per minute, a lot, not a lot. That's not necessarily something I can say. I think that's a little bit more subjective in terms of how you all feel about it. But I'll add 2 things that I think are important to think about in terms of that diversion effect. The transportation analysis report found that the do nothing option doesn't look very good either. If we do nothing on Colfax into the future, population growth in the area, employment growth in the area is going to happen. That's going to increase the demand for travel in the city and in this area. And the effect in terms of, the amount of delay that people experience and the number of vehicles traveling on the streets in this area is going to increase as well. The effect of the Colfax project in and of itself is pretty small compared to the effect that we see just owing to population and employment growth in the area. So I say that because I think it's important to acknowledge that do nothing doesn't look like a very good option if you look at the transportation analysis. And with the Colfax BRT project, we get that reliable fast transit ride with that same growth in travel time for people in the area. The last thing I want to mention on this topic is that this result from the analysis really drives the city's current thinking on what do we do about it. So I think it was mentioned in the April public meeting that the city has begun studying the safety effects of that traffic shift on the parallel streets 13, 14, portions of 16th, 17th, and 18th. And we're expecting that alongside, the design of the Colfax BRT and alongside the construction, that the city will be identifying different ways of improving the safety on those parallel streets as well. Hopefully in an aim that, that while there is some increase in traffic, we don't want the quality of life and the safety of those streets and the people in those neighborhoods to be diminished by that. So that's the aim of that study, and that's something that we'll be bringing back to this group in the months to come.
Good, thank you. And I heard you mention left turns, and left turn lanes, I'm going to come back to you on that, because I know that that's a topic of interest in terms of access to neighborhood amenities. So we'll come back to that. But before we do that, I'd love to be able to just get your perspective on your bus rapid transit, and some of what you heard through the neighborhood planning process and how that aligns.
So the neighborhood planning process included back in 20 the plan on both sides of Colfax from Broadway to Yosemite, East Central, and one for this area, the East area plan, east of Colorado Boulevard. And what area plans do is look about 20 years out to the future and really set a vision for comprehensive change, both in transportation, but also land use, types of jobs, types of housing, et cetera, parks, amenities. And generally for the Colfax corridor, the future vision has been to transform it into more of a pedestrian, multimodal place where people feel comfortable walking, more of a destination, less of a barrier that a lot of people felt it was between neighborhoods. It wasn't very pleasant to sit out on a patio, for example. So a lot of that input went into the recommendations for those neighborhood plans, things like adding street trees, adding more comfortable crossings, better sidewalks, better access from the bicycle network, putting in bicycle network on parallel streets, putting in traffic calming on parallel streets in anticipation of traffic diversion and around sensitive land uses like schools, safe routes to schools. So all of those recommendations are in those plans. Those plans are adopted by city council by ordinance. And so they serve as a guide for zoning decisions and infrastructure decisions, including the Colfax Bus Rapid Transit Project, which recommends a center running bus rapid transit project on Colfax in the short term. It was one of the top 4 priorities in those plans. And there's a variety of reasons why, the neighborhood plans are important for the future of the city. One was, the ability to accommodate growth in a sustainable way. The city is growing. The planning department doesn't control, how many jobs are created in the city. That we don't control that. Denver is a desirable place. People are moving here, but what our job is to really make sure that we accommodate that growth in a way that achieves community benefits and mitigates any downsides. So the policy of the city when it comes to transportation and employment population growth is not to widen streets and add more traffic lanes. Generally, it's to facilitate a more sustainable shift to pedestrian, bicyclists, and to transit. And that has a variety of ancillary benefits, greenhouse gas emissions being one of them, pedestrian safety being another top one. Colfax is one of the most dangerous places in the city to walk on the high injury network, slowing down traffic and more people out on the streets, out on the sidewalks using transit is a significant safety benefit along with the other pedestrian.
Thank you, Kurt. I think that historical context for those who have not been involved in the process, they know that many of you have. I think it's incredibly valuable, particularly as it links to the project, to the Colfax BRT project, and what it is the city is trying to achieve, and the community is trying to achieve with the project. You mentioned so much about cyclist safety and access, pedestrian cyclist safety and access. And Stephen, I'd love for you to talk about what does it look like in the future for someone walking or riding this corridor with BRT?
Yeah, so great question. I think one of the things that we're really excited about is how do we improve safety for all users of the street, as folks said, getting Colfax off the high green network is a really big focus of this. And that starts with protecting our most vulnerable users. So that's folks walking, that's folks biking, that's folks scooting, getting to and from transit after they park their car, right? So a lot of improvements for those modes are what you'll see on the sidewalks. We're going to be creating more bulb outs to shorten crossings, adding signals in places where they weren't before, and having some better crossings, bike signals, things like that. Really keeping an eye on those north-south facilities so that when somebody is trying to get across Colfax on their destination elsewhere, there's an easy way to do that. A lot of focus has gone to getting pedestrians to and from the station. We know that Colfax today, at higher speeds, longer crossings is a real challenge. And so, as some of my other panelists have discussed, that by having a few less lanes for people to cross, that's less time that you're out in the street, exposed, things like that. And so we're really excited about the potential safety benefits we'll see across the corridor and how fewer folks will need to get hurt and or killed on this great street. So that's probably the highest level piece, but obviously.
That's good. And it just comes back to one of the comments that we got from the project team is, again, and I said it earlier, is when the city decides to invest in a bus project, they're not just investing in a bus project, right? This is about all mobilities and enhancing the experience for those who walk, ride, and who ride and use the bus. So I wanted to hit two more questions. I'm going to open it up to you, to the audience here, to the folks that are joining us virtually. I wanted to come back to left turn lanes again, acknowledging who's in the room and what your top priorities are. So what is the plan, Charlie, for left turn lanes, and what is that going to mean in terms of access to neighborhood amenities?
That everyone who can currently drive to and access their property by car today will still be able to do that in the future with the project. With the changes, you might choose a different route for how exactly you get to your property, but everyone will still be able to access their properties by car. So why the management of access and the left turn consolidation? So there's really two primary drivers of this. One relates to safety. The lack of access management, the left turns to minor streets, to driveways throughout this corridor, results in crashes between people driving, results in crashes between vehicles and pedestrians, and is part of the overall crash picture on Colfax. And that component, the median and the centering bus lanes, is specifically one of the biggest safety benefits of the project. So that's one of the reasons for the left turn management. The other reason is for bus travel times. This is part of the decision between side running and center running. The center running traffic keeps the buses out of the general purpose travel lane, also keeps them from interacting with people turning right or people making parallel parking maneuvers. And ultimately, that centering configuration of the median gives a lot of the travel time benefit now and into the future for the buses. So that is the why. In terms of what people can expect, the left turns will still be allowed at the majority of signalized intersections along the corridor. And with the traffic shift that we're expecting in terms of people, more often using 13th, 14th, 17th, or 18th, a lot of people, that otherwise would have had to make a left turn on Colfax might choose to use a different route to get to their destination on Colfax instead. We have counted every single side street, every single driveway, every single traffic signal on the corridor to understand the magnitude of the shift in terms of number of people that are going to be making those movements now at the signals that aren't making them today, that are making them at the unsignalized driveways or minor streets. The overall effect of that for people that live on those streets that have a traffic signal on them, outside of the arterial streets, the big streets like the Colorado boulevards and the York streets and Josephine streets of the area, that effect is probably going to be in the ballpark of 50 vehicles or less per hour. So I live on one of those streets. I understand that 50 vehicles in an hour isn't ideal, and increasing that. But at the same time, we're not talking about thousands of vehicles per day of increase as a result of that. So we're not expecting the function of the street to change significantly. We're not taking these streets that are local streets and changing them into arterial streets. We're very, very far off from that. And we think the issues that arise from that can be mitigated over time the city is going to be monitoring issues that arise on all the streets in the area. We're not, with our predictive powers in transportation, able to predict every single issue that's gonna pop up. So rather than trying to predict issues that we don't know will manifest at this time, we're sort of saving that effort, that time and that money, so that over time we can be working with members of the community to understand and mitigate issues that can propagate from that.
And I also want to acknowledge the topic of parking. We have Nick here, from the project team. And the drive also have something about parking. And so Nick, if you can just remind the folks in the room and online, what is gonna happen? What's gonna happen with parking? Why was that determined? And then what is the work that you're going to be doing to help inform the use of it?
Sure. So as part of the project, I think acknowledging that there's limited space that's out there currently, that when you put in stations and you put in dedicated transit lanes, some of the other things that are there change with that. Right? And parking is one of those that with the project, the full corridor end to end, there's around 300 spaces that are out there currently that are not going to be there in the future when the project is implemented. And so with that, there's a lot of change in terms of how people will park or may park, or the demand for parking. We acknowledge that parking near destinations, the parking near your house is a really important thing for many people, most people. And that as part of the project, we're conducting a curbside access plan. And so got some information over here, and happy to talk with folks after this Q&A in more detail about any streets that you have questions on. But as part of the process, we're looking at occupancy data in the morning, early morning. We're looking at occupancy in the midday, noon time frame, and then occupancy in the evenings, acknowledging that parking usage and parking, the people that are parking, there's different users on the corridor. There's residents, there's people accessing businesses, there's people going to events, all sorts of people that park on the corridor and around the corridor. So as part of that, we're measuring where people are parking, we're measuring what the existing parking regulations are in the neighborhood now. And through the process, we're going to evaluate updating and changing the parking regulations to meet the best needs of all the users that are part of the corridor. So that's a quick summary, but as I mentioned, we'll be here afterwards to have more discussions with folks after.
For those in the room, I think it's gonna be a meeting out. Love their feedback and that's cards for you to get with specific questions about parking and to demonstrate and to let them get with to being part of follow-on conversations. So we didn't answer all of the questions, but hopefully we hit on some of the key questions that you all identified, be it driving us, driving your vehicle, accessing your house, your services along corridor, turn lanes, the alignment with the neighborhood planning initiative, what it's going to mean for pedestrians, what it's going to mean for cyclists. That's the start of the conversation. We all know that we have more questions. And so what we'd like to do is turn it over to you for about 35 minutes, or as whatever time we need within that time frame, to be able to answer some of the questions that are on the. So give us a moment because we just need to figure out the money situation. We're going to use that. First, we'll go here, and then we'll come over here. Okay. Go ahead, Ann. If you could state your question clearly so that those in the room, or rather, who are not in the room, can really be great. And if you want to direct your question to somebody who could take that. But one of other things.
Yes, I'm reading this. Wait for it. I'm writing a conservative Congressburg neighborhood express my strong opposition to proposed changes to Adams and Steel Street, working with the route post transit. years, me, whole life. If our already crowded streets are deemed inappropriate for parking, that changes our family and our neighborhood. The changes to our family and our neighborhoods will be detrimental. First, the proposal that Adams and Steele would become part of a thoroughfare with our children in danger, as we have seen on 13th and 6th Avenue. Right to put the speed limit, the traffic control right, and people drive well beyond the limit, if not double. More than 100 children who walk the neighborhood to school using these exact streets. It's clear that the cars parked on the streets create a barrier and financial consequence for the drivers to avoid accidents by slowing their speed. The parent of two very young active children, it's clear the threat that this promotes. Additionally, our children must walk to our car that is often parked in front of our house. Having parking available on our street requires them to potentially cross double streets with even faster drivers traveling. Yet another safety matter is the inevitable bus stop traffic that would inhabit our blocks. The bus stop directly around the corner from us on Colfax are filled with drug and alcohol paraphernalia. We have experienced an increase in overall crime over the last year. Property damage, theft, road rage, and violent acts throughout the city of Denver. Every neighbor I know has experienced some of the theft or property damage in the last 24 months. Having additional transit, foot traffic in our neighborhood, as well as public and bus stops, will only negatively affect our block. Riding on a quiet street, strategic move for our family and the families around us. The beauty of our neighborhood relies heavily on our green space, including individually designed and maintained gardens, mature trees, ponds, and front porches. To increase this kind of traffic would exponentially reduce property values on the affected streets. There's a reason none of us wanted to live on York or Josephine. We also already have 4 apartment complexes on Adams and Steele Street. It's clear the residents who actually live here do not need more traffic with less parking. Different streets are obviously better options than ours. I don't see many people even using the bus transit system in the first place at this point. I realize the goal is to increase public transportation. However, this type of change negatively impacts some of the longest term residents in the area. The bus companies in Denver are famously understaffed, meaning this would, could be for nothing if usage decreases. It's understood that improvements to infrastructure are often necessary, but I firmly believe the alternate solution is destroying some of our most well-loved and maintained streets with this type of use. I urge you to reconsider alternative approaches to such implementation traffic calming measures, providing residents free parking as we have enjoyed on the street from the beginning. Investing in pedestrian safety infrastructure and potentially redesigning your plan to a different route, perhaps one with fewer permanent residents, is critical to involve the residents of the neighborhood in the decision-making process.
So I'm going to try to paraphrase what I heard with some of the topics that I've heard. One is diversion, the neighborhood streets, so congestion, the neighborhood streets, correct? The other piece is safety. What does that mean in terms of safety on neighborhood streets? And the last piece is parking, the availability of parking, what does it mean for those who live and work perhaps along private streets? Is that fair? Is that a fair sort of synopsis of the topics?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I would love to be able to get those sort of topic by topic. So Charlie, let's go back to diversion a little bit, particularly in the area that we talked about. And what does Colfax BRT mean for diversion of traffic congestion on neighborhood streets? And what are we doing about it? And then I'll just follow on what's it for safety and what are we doing? Lots.
Let me try to take those lines. Yeah. Great questions. Great. Thank you for your feedback. So I gave the high level synopsis about, a lot of the traffic shift, from the repurposing of the travel lane. In terms of the longer trips moving to the east-west streets, also, in the magnitude of 2 to 5 vehicles per minute during the government direction. Also gave that summary that a lot of the changes we expect the travel patterns on the local streets are generally related to how people are accessing different destinations, Colfax in your area related to, the median and the bus lanes that will change where people. So, that's really sort of, what's driving some of the changes. Again, our estimate of the effect street by street is that those changes are relatively small in their effect, 50 vehicles per hour. That's more than what's there today. But there are local streets that operate with volumes greater than that, perfectly safely, perfectly fine. That said, the challenge with an increase in traffic like that is what do we do to manage issues that in some cases may exist today, that need to be addressed, in other cases, could not exist today that we see in the future. So that is the city's expectation and plan in terms of studying the safety in this area and continuing to engage with the residents and the business owners and other constituents in the area over time to understand what your existing safety concerns are, see what we can do to mitigate those as the project is designed and as the project is built, and also monitor that over time and continue the process of improving and mitigating so that we're addressing safety on the local streets as well as the other streets in the area. The city's commitment to Vision Zero, we talked about Colfax being on the high risk or on the high injury network in the city and wanting to eliminate severe injuries and fatalities in Colfax. Vision Zero isn't limited to Colfax. Vision Zero is all the streets in the city. So the Adams streets, the Steel streets in the city area are equally as important as we think about what that means from the implementation of devices with safety.
So let me just hit on a couple of things that I heard you say previously to Charlie. One is that a lot of the safety issues, they're very real, right? We know, Don knows that, right? And a lot of them predate the project. And so one of the things that Charlie mentioned is this study, the safety study, is also real, right? The city will be monitoring traffic and looking at speed and some of the speed and sort of the issues that come from diversion of traffic from Colfax. So that is real, with the hope of implementing some of those countermeasures as part of it. The other piece I do want you to mention, maybe again, Charlotte, is what would happen if we didn't do BRT? What would that scenario change?
Yeah, I mean, the transportation report, generally speaking, showed that the population employment growth in the city and the area increases traffic in the area without the demand for travel in Denver and the area is going to go up. So it's a question of who is serving. So some of the issues that appear, might be different in that scenario, but there's still issues associated with that.
You had a question over here.
I live in the 1400 block of Statesville Street, and it's clear to me from how you guys are presenting that this is a deal. But I'm just curious how your models were informed by the change in commute patterns between east and west, going downtown or not going to offices as much anymore. And also, how have emergency services been reflected in your plans and models? Living off Colfax for 20 years, there's the ambulance or fire truck. Colorado takes up the lane of traffic. So how is that going to work? So you really look at the economic cost of slow travel time for drivers who comprise the vast majority of east-west travel. Well, Colfax is the primary east-west travel street. I never drive side streets because I can currently go from Colfax into the alley. But your plans will now have me and my husband driving through neighborhood streets. Fortuitously, I'm not sure how that fits with your greenhouse stuff in order to get to where how like increases our vehicles.
I'm going to turn it back over to you because I think this is a very good transportation related.
Thanks for these questions. I'll try to do one at a time. So in terms of how our analysis has been informed by the pandemic changed the patterns. Tough question to answer, right? A great question to ask. Because we're still finding out exactly how things are going to change post-pandemic. What I will say is that the overall, the Denver Regional Council of Governments, which is the metropolitan organization for the area, has studied pretty extensively travel patterns, traffic volumes before COVID and after COVID. What we generally found, and I live in this area as well, and what I've experienced is that the morning rush hour is a little bit lighter, less people going downtown. The afternoon rush hour is about the same in terms of its intensity. And some of the trips that people were taking, from work back to home, people still have to make that errand that they were going to do after work. They're just doing that starting instead of starting work. So I think it's important to recognize that not every single trip on the 15 and 15 mile today is a commute trip. A lot of those trips are trips people need to take for shopping, some medical appointments, for all the things that we need to do in our lives. So our expectation is that the relevancy of this project, in terms of the demand that it's going to serve, is going to be intact and going to be relevant and beneficial in the future. That slide John showed earlier showed that while ridership for transit citywide and nationally dropped significantly during the pandemic, I think 20% of pre-pandemic levels. Colfax continued to serve 60% of its pre-pandemic ridership, so vastly outperforming the rest of the RTD bus system, and compared to nationally, many more people riding it, and that really reflects a lot of the people who either choose not to drive, who don't have the choice to drive, who need to use the bus, or who have service type jobs that require them to still be at work. So maybe those numbers are a little bit different than they would have otherwise expected to be without the pandemic, but we feel very strongly that the project is still beneficial in this. The emergency services, we are communicating with TPD and then the fire department. They review all project designs as those move through the process, make sure that they can still serve and do a good job of serving the important job that they do. That's something as I mentioned, it's for every city project, and this would be no exception as we move through the design reviews. Yeah, thanks for that. That's what's going to be that emergency responders also will have access plans. So that actually is a really big benefit to them in the future of having, a reliable way to move quickly from east to west and probably, frankly, improve their travel times and what they otherwise would have been without it. And then lastly, the cost of slow travel times, what it means for people who primarily use Colfax today. The overall benefit, in terms of reducing the vehicle miles traveled, in terms of the number of people who will use the bus in the future instead of driving, that adds up to a pretty significant benefit. That doesn't come without some change in how people access the properties today and how people get from those properties to the other streets to travel on. We as the design team definitely understand that. The average trip length in the area in the east-west direction is, I think, 3.3 miles that we included in the mission report. So, the emissions reductions associated with removing a lot of trips from the network that are, 3+ miles in length. Understand, that's sort of the benefit. That does come at the cost of a little bit more driving potentially to access certain properties, owing to the difference in access. But we do still think that the benefit from a BMT or vehicle miles traveled and greenhouse gas reduction emission standpoint is still in the ballpark of what we expect when we take in all those things.
And we'll come here, then here, and then here, and then we'll go on.
Hello, thank you for hosting this and giving us some information. It's very important. Couple of questions. One, you mentioned transit. Many operators, that's actually B, and how many operators would that be per bus or plus officer? One of the things that we're concerned with on our street, and just Adam Street, if we have resident parking like your house, if we don't have a parking on our street for the Bluebird and all the venues around our street. Is there any plans in this to change the actual residents parking on the side streets?
parking's really heavy now. We also have a very large project at the Paradise Cleaners. That's going in, there's gonna be another 80 or so units. And adds to the other 4 apartment buildings in our general area. How does this affect us?
Great.
Last one is adding 50 cars to our street is a lot. Sit on the Adams Street with front porch and count how many cars are there already. See, there's Steel Street. It's a lot of cars, adding 50 more.
Okay, so let's hit those. We can take sort of this component of right, that would be helpful. And then Nick and Kurt, if you could talk a little bit about parking. Parking as the line to the future of Denver. That would be helpful. And then if we have time.
So RTD's transit police, so our current security, I believe about 200 or 250. Security officers, so it doesn't have police. I believe we have about 15 police. And the plan is to increase the number of police officers. It's planned to be, it's basically a random enforcement, if not. They're on its bus, if you drive a bunch of bus, basically, but they're, similar to how light rail does, they were officers that. Board one bus, and check theirs. And then we do that, and the police, who are the sometimes straight up, we don't have contracts with local jurisdictions as well, the city of Denver and city of officers both regulated by the Colfax license, today. Think that's a great way there, so I don't know, exactly what the numbers are gonna look like, but it's, random.
What about parking? Parking to address existing demand and parking to address future.
Sure, yeah, that's a great question. This kind of repeat, we are kind of kicking off the curbside access plan today. With these boards that are here, that this is one of 3 meetings that we're going to be talking about curbside access plan. This first one, we're really looking at getting your input and feedback. So after we're done talking, you can talk with me and leave comments about some specifics. As the feedback we're looking for today are the types of users need to access parking and have different access needs to their space currently and into the future, and getting your perspective on what those are. And then also looking at what are the major parking generators that those users are attracted to. So Uber and others along the corridor, we have some of those marked on the maps, but that's a really important part of the process to understand that. I would also invite those who are interested in talking about the issue more specifically to leave their contact information. We're going to be having a meeting dedicated towards looking at the vision for how should parking rates regulations be changed and be enacted in all of the streets shown on these boards, so all the areas between Broadway and Colorado, 13th, 17th, over the areas we're looking at. And so all of the streets are being evaluated for if they need to have changed parking regulations or if they should be updated to have different regulations throughout the day. So maybe they have 2-hour time restrictions all the time, but residents are exempted from that. But with the way it works today, that we were talking about at the neighborhood park today. So all of that is up for evaluation as we're going through that process, and we really need input. Different users or.
Please check. And then Bert, I just wanted to see if there's anything that you wanted to say about parking and parking.
Yeah, definitely encourage you to worry about street parking in person and specifics. I think generally for parking, especially in an urban environment close to downtown where the pattern for now and into the future is to encourage the walking, bicycling. The approach is to get parking efficiently deployed and not over parking area and not necessarily under parking. So when you provide too much parking, it can actually increase vehicle trips and increase traffic in the area. It's sort of a magnet drive, so that it's very easy to get parking. And what we see in places where it's harder to park, would opt to be walk, bicycle, take transit instead. That's not to say that we want to eliminate parking, we have recommendations along Colfax, especially the special events. And other peak demand uses for certain parking uses, be more efficient with our parking, facilitate what we call shared use parking agreements. So things like banks and churches that don't have the same peak demands of parking that other uses have, like Uber, Uber and others, actually enter into shared agreements, and we're encouraging those goods and allowing it to happen with regulatory changes. Try to encourage that from property owners. We're also looking at opportunities in the future for shared public facilities as the corridor rebuilds as well. So those are some of the things that are recommended to try to right size parking or walking.
Okay, so I said, blue shirt from here. And then we'll go on.
Thank you for hosting this. Comment and question. In many ways, Colfax grew up with the Century Lane being problems 70 years ago. So you guys are just restoring Colfax, not changing it. I think. The second one is looking at like BRT disasters, like the Silver Line in Boston. Like there are 5 critical things needed for BRT. And I think you guys are doing all. How strong you guys are gonna stick to it, things running fast, because the center lane, the level boarding, buying your ticket off the bus, those are all things that have to stick to it to make it work. So like I don't think you guys are selling like how these things come together to make it really special.
So is the question, how are we
Sticking to the plan.
sticking to the plan? And when you say the plan, are you talking about those 5 characteristics?
Yes, so like, if you say that you're following the article 5 standard, thing to go to, which is
Yeah, can you articulate those like a?
dedicated right of way, walkway alignment, off-board fare collection, intersection treatments, platform level boarding. Like, I don't know if I heard intersection treatments.
Yeah.
Howard, thank you.
So I'm trying to figure it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So, thank you for the comment, thank you for the question. Yes, all of those elements are included as part of the proposed, bus rapid transit. Dedicated travel lane, obviously, right away, the alignment on already the higher. Segment that Trump showed earlier between some of the. And then I'll talk on the intersection piece in a minute, to talk about what we're doing there. But all of those, we can talk about how this project is getting federal funding through the Federal Transit Administration. And that we had to do the projects every day. So to get federal funding and to maintain federal funding, we need to deliver on all of them. So those elements are going to be maintained. Exactly how they look, might be different, but the essence of those elements. Intersection standpoint, in addition to the dedicated lanes, there is already on Colfax Avenue what's called transit signal priority. Is that the buses are actually communicating with the computers that control the traffic. And the bus is literally telling, the light, don't turn red yet, I'm just a few seconds away. If we hold the green, make it through, and I'll save my riders 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 90 seconds. Okay. I think that exists around 19 intersections, 18, okay, close. So all of those intersections that have transit signal priority today will have transit signal priority. RTD has studied that extensively and generally found that those locations that are installed today were the locations that were causing the buses the most delays to begin with. So that's the intersection improvements that we can't necessarily see because it's sort of backup cost system that will be included.
I just have to say, so appreciate the comment about restoring Colfax, sort of its historic legacy of. So yes, Stuart in a denim shirt, yes, and then we're gonna go over here to the.
haven't gotten. They're gonna run it, they're still having got to send over the line. Everyone in one. Aurora doesn't know that you know, or you know, or don't know. Transport board. I have to say it's a little bit slow. This shows incidents throughout the Falls Park, County Park Boulevard. These kind of little mistakes which question the whole. Carry. Having said that. It's 26 and 27, but I think the next two. It seems to me to say that if you do nothing, 2040. Travel. Down to westbound in the morning. Are longer with. Traffic transit system than they are if you do nothing. So I'm trying to figure out why you're doing it. If you're gonna increase travel times, and make stress corridors overall during the rush hour, why would you do this project?
And when you say, let me just be clear, when you say increase travel time, you're talking about vehicle. Right, and just for the, I believe that's what you're talking about.
Maybe I'm talking about vehicle travel times, but it doesn't specify.
Is it- Yes. So to restate the question, why are we doing the project? If we're increasing travel time. So one, I want to just validate that, if we can validate that one way or the other. And then two, we can move on to, I think the general sentiment.
Thanks for the question. The report is dependencies for 180 pages long, so I can have them memorized. If you want to talk about a specific page or figure, I'm happy to do that after the meeting. I'll be here. But let me talk about, reiterate the project benefit from a bus travel time standpoint. The transportation analysis and transportation support showed that if we don't do anything, that the time it takes for the Colfax is going to increase by up to 30 minutes. And the transportation analysis and report found that the center running bus lane saves up to 30 minutes of travel for the buses during the peak hour. It does cause, as I mentioned, in the open dialogue, some increase in travel time for people driving. We found that in off peak or in the direction against peak hour travel, not much change for people. So if you're traveling, at noon or traveling opposite the peak direction, your experience isn't going to be very different. But if you are traveling in the peak direction during that peak hour, we found that the travel times for people driving increased by approximately 1 minute per mile traveled through the study area. So it does have a significant benefit for people taking transit. Imagine the 20,000 plus people that ride the bus today, they're experiencing minutes more delay up to 30 minutes if they're making that full trip from that's a significant burden for what ultimately is the spine of transit in Denver. So that travel time savings is really, really important for people that use the bus now and that will bus future. But we recognize and acknowledge that it does increase the travel time for people traveling again, peak hour and peak direction by some level, but that level overall is manageable in the scheme of travel.
Okay, yes, in the back.
Hi, thank you so much for coming out today. I live at Milwaukee and 13th. I've been there for 15 years. So I'm not as close as many of my neighbors here, but this does really impact me. I have several questions. Much like the gentleman just said, why are we, the lucky people in Denver, doing the center link BRT? And Aurora is not. I have family in Albuquerque. I've watched the Central Avenue project go through. I watched all the businesses on that street leave. They finished the project and now this beautiful center lane bus goes nuts. And I really don't want to kill Colfax because it's great, the business is great. And much like this gentleman, why do we do the center lane? It's 2.5 year build. Why don't we test it? The BRT, I agree, to do something. Let's test the right lane, the traditional lane BRT, make sure we have the ridership to encourage it, to keep it going before we tear up full load. So the general focus for me was point one, why are we doing center lane? My second focus, much like many of my neighbors, is traffic. But instead of the central streets or the secular streets, I'm worried about the exterior streets. Fact, Colorado, Josephine, if you try and turn off of 13th and 14th on Colorado going north, it's going to take 2 lights. It might take 3 lights. So Josephine is the same way. I do not believe in any way your numbers that is going to be less than 1 minute per mile. They closed 14th going east to do a water project in front of the hospital. So we were all routed out of Colfax to get on to Colorado. It would take a minimum of 3 left turn lights to move. I just see this happening everywhere. 1 minute from now, I'm worried that in Congress Park, we're going to be landlocked and not be let out of our neighborhood because we're being forced to Colorado and Josephine, which are already. So that's my second traffic, bigger roads. Is transit, does the ridership truly support this plan? I work downtown. Every time I've taken the bus since the pandemic ended, the bus stop at Broadway and Colfax, there's arrests, people are pants down, people are yelling at each other the entire bus ride. It smells like pot. I don't want to get on this. Period. I don't feel safe. So that changes, I can't get back. And my last concern is really the neighborhood character, what brought us to Congress Park. The wonderful part of being here, being able to walk on Colfax, watching our kids all walk to school, knowing every shop, saying hi, 1 car a minute. I just, much like my neighbors, that is a huge change and I really am concerned for the transit, for traffic on our park, and also our businesses being able to survive at 2.5 to fill out.
Thank you for all of that, Shannon. I'm glad that you've done it with urban character, because I think that sort of helps to bring that set of questions full circle. As perhaps one of the criteria that was used to evaluate some. Versus, so we'll start there, and then we can perhaps get out some.
Sure. Yeah, so why center run roads? The question that the traffic experts and Dottie, we thought a lot about that for a long time. And actually, this was a decision that we made, I think 4 or 5 years ago at this point. But it's still a valid question, and I want to talk about the thought process that occurred to why that decision was made. And so, first of all, it was aligning the project with the goals of what the community, what the city wants out of the future of Denver. And that was more mobility choices and a safer transportation network. And so when that was looked at the lens, looked through with the lens of the Colfax BRT, it just turned out that centrally, first of all, it allows the buses to move faster through the corridor. So if you want enhanced mobility, the center run does that. Another thing is it's safe. We can say that center run with this. So there's less opportunity for cars to conflict with pedestrians or cyclists when it's in the center. So it's more safe, have enhanced service, and it moves faster than the convertible. So this aligns perfectly with what we heard from the community that they wanted out of the project. And safety and service. And so we found that the center running did both of those. Now, another benefit that we noticed with the center running was, first of all, there's more parking options for people who choose to travel by particular thing like it. So parking ends up being less in conflict with bus traveling. If it was on the side running, there's a sticky question of what are we going to do about trying to get cars over to the curb, but there's a bus that's supposed to be bus only, and then that slows down the bus even more, and then the drivers get upset. So it turned out to be a benefit for cars as well. And then it kind of takes us back to the thing about urban character, which because
when we put the bus in the middle of the right of way, it allows us to activate the streets, the areas on the either side of the street more for pedestrians. So, and we thought of that as another benefit that the community would want as well, with activating the pedestrian experience on the sides of this.
We just managed to see Stephen, or is there anything that you want to say about that, related to the work that you've done? The center running was a short-term priority as part of the East Central Plan. It was passed. The top five.
I think just on that, by having center running is even different parts of the street. It does provide that like step crossing for pedestrians. So instead of the second step off the curb, having to cross those, including parking 7 lanes, so you're back on the curb. You can find that as cross, so it does have static, pedestrian sites crossing that.
So I'm
North south traffic.
yes. Yes, yeah, thank you. We can do that. So the question was really, what are the north-south impact traffic? Some of those main, there's main roads.
Yeah, great question. So, the reciprocation analysis is where they consider the north-south streets in the area and that they interact with the east-west streets. That summary statistic of rush hour peak direction per mile, includes all of that and assumes growth of traffic now and the movement, those intersections, those are the main points. So, I would love to acknowledge that you're right on. In general, what we found through the analysis was that the ability of the network to serve that traffic over the course of the hour, it is great. It generally can move that traffic through. But we do see some intersections that experience more delays. We see some intersections where people can wait one more cycle than they do now. That's an acknowledged trade-off that comes along project and sort of contributes that 1 minute of additional travel time. One thing that the report also identified was a handful of improvements off of Colfax that would help better serve that. So we identified a number of locations, including locations like Park Boulevard and 17th Avenue, Colorado Boulevard, 13th, 17th, Yosemite and Colfax, and then Quebec and 17th as locations that would receive improvements so that those movements, those sort of locations that are experiencing delays now and would experience more delay in the future have more ability to serve the traffic that is trying to move. Afterwards, I'm happy to talk about this. And
Charlie, can you just bring on the ridership, the numbers and the ridership projections?
yeah, so I believe the projection is that by 2040, approximately 32,000 riders per day on Colfax BRT. So when we talk about the federal funding for the project and sort of the pie of the project, one that it's 15 highest bus ridership routes in corridor in the whole region. So significant importance to the city. One thing I want to mention that's in addition to ridership is 40% of the people that ride the bus transfer to or from another route. So that could be any of the move south routes, like the 12 on Downing, the 20. I think okay. So Colfax isn't important, just for the people that are trying to get to Colfax. It's that spine of transit travel in all of East Denver. You take all those things into account. It's not just a lot of ridership locally, it's a lot of ridership when you compare it nationally to other systems where BRT is being implemented. The FTA takes that into consideration when they're awarding funding to projects like these. So suffice to say that the amount of rides that we have on Colfax down into the future is significant when you look at other cities that have successful and great transit. And that's a lot of the driving force of why the project is so necessary.
Yeah, and to add to that, you did ask the question, you know, is this ready for this, 15 out today is greater than all of our, that all of our, that are being busy development, except for say. Expecting it to get a little 30,000, maybe except for this year then.
There's still some energy in the room, so I'm gonna keep going until I get the clear sign that we are, we're done. So how about just a few more questions? Frank, I'm gonna go to you, please, and I'm gonna then check with Emma. Emma, do we have some questions online that folks would like to address?
Most have been addressed already. I'll scan one more time while you're going, Frank, and I'll.
I really want your. Looking. Glad that you got a chance there, and I'm also interested in the north-south routes, and well, maybe there's like two pieces to this question. One, I'm pretty sure you studied like the feasibility of biking on Colfax, you know, with the BRT. To me, if you could say like, clearly that isn't an option, and it's like, what is preventing that? But then with north-south, right, if I'm a bike rider wanting to get to the BRT, there's challenging north-south routes to get there. And where the stops are going to be are kind of challenged. So as a bike rider, how are people going to safely access the BRT from a north-south perspective?
So great question, you know, students, so driving, I think. The first one, and you know, why can't we get like the Colfax? As we discussed, there are a lot of trade-offs here, and so hurrying through that process, that's to make sure that there's adequate space for the buses, stations, vehicles that travel on the corridor. System that by not trying to also put like an engine Colfax was the right choice to meet most people with limited space, which is only the data charged here. And so with that, really looking at these parallel corridors, making sure that some folks might notice when we're doing 16th Street right now. There's suggestions in the plan for curve reference to look at corridor south, the Colfax are similar. So they're trying to include those parallel streets in concert with Colfax, focus on Colfax first, and the street that is the most dangerous. Most opportunity for. Also, I think that is your question of why the bike lanes on Colfax, there are some trade-offs there. Or connecting the north-south streets, this is something we spent a lot of time thinking about. So it's everything from the streets that currently have a bike facility to shorten those crossings, add better signals at Colfax, making sure that if there might be a lot of queuing of vehicles waiting to turn, that there's a way for people biking to get out like that. So sections, try and both make it more convenient while also safe with the folks accessing it that way. So kind of working with our head team, folks might be familiar, there was a lot of planning work done in this area with community transportation networks. And so trying to make those improvements with a priority to connect to the stations that we know are going to be a much higher trip gen. So I think that's probably the quickest answer to your question, so that I hit on them. Bike weeks, and then right for pedestrian, we often say, unless you're fortunate enough that you must stop at your house or in your bedroom, walking, biking, or driving to get there. And so making sure that we view the pedestrian as sort of the main design digital for this corridor, keeping them safe first so that we can take this off the high entry network, get prioritized and really have sections. So
I think this your line from the north-south perspective seems to be kind of, I don't know what I can visualize coming from the north, like that's like this thing, but I can't really visualize what the that.
Yeah, so I think a great one you can add to specific designs, and I think as the Bruce mentioned, Colfax in some ways is the first move that will have some other impacts, and so then where we need to make those improvements, maybe the trade-off of
that exists, one of those corridors, that are priorities of the speeding of it noted, so. Sort of again, with the, that first speed change, that whole place that you know has really more flow that it's it, but it's. See where it's impacts are.
Okay, I do see some people leaving, and I don't want to empty the room without you all having an opportunity to provide feedback to Nick on the curbside access. So I'm gonna take one more question in the room, and then all other questions, you folks will stick around for a little bit. If you'd like to follow up with anybody in particular. Okay.
$45 years. And I would just like to, you guys raise your hand if you live in this corridor that we live in the era. Right. Got it. Or so anyway. Get it. And I, in 45 years, I've seen our area on lot. All I can see is the guys that are coming in and tear up our area for a couple of years. Let us back. Very happy with that. So, I'm fine.
That's, I think that was a comment and afterwards.
I don't kind of really need it, you can talk pretty loud.
You know, folks that are, it's very, great, thank you.
Maybe some of my questions, everybody else. All this closely, I guess, but, I guess I'm curious, like the BRT bus, what will be the capacity of that? How will that compare with the typical bus that operates on Colfax right now? And stated that frequency would be about 4.3 minutes per bus, whereas the 3 to 4 times more frequently. And I don't know. Just trying to run some of these numbers through my mind here. And I don't know, there will be any parking on Colfax where it's instead of running BRT. And then also with some of the traffic issues, if I heard said with turn lanes, maybe adding 2 to 5 vehicles per minute. Okay, but that's a lot, and vehicles are going down across 14th Avenue or 13th. I don't know what kind of planning has been done to reduce the speed and control things. Right now, there's intersections that basically take your life in your hands every time you want to cross because parked cars, the vision is obstructed, you gotta be looking between cars and watching for an opening, you can't really see down the street or cases where there's trees right adjacent to the intersection. Signs, the city does a pretty poor job of enforcing things about maintaining visibility, people have trees completely covering stop signs. And so to reduce the speed, they're at alleys, and so there's gonna have to be a lot more control there. And I guess I got other questions, but
No, we
shut
appreciate
up
that.
and
And I appreciate you full parking into that, because I think that's where we want to go for any of you who want to spend more time. So 3 things I heard. One, how the buses are going to operate, the frequency of the buses, their capacity of the buses, are they going to be the same, are they going to be different? And then Charlie, if you could hit on just kind of the scope of the safety, effort, specific to parallel streets. I think, sir, that would address the issue initial. Anything on more? We have a competition going. Anybody? Thank you. Thank you. Glad that you're here. Thank you for showing up. And so we'd love to just address your questions quickly and then we'll.
So the plan is an articulated bus, it's the bending buses, the accordion buses that are in there. They have capacity, seating capacity of 155 passengers. Yeah, depending on how fresh loaded it is, 75 going here. And with the frequency, so every 4.3 minutes, there's 14 buses an hour. That is the same frequency that is out there today, between 15 and 15 hours. We run 6 buses an hour every 10 minutes, 15, 8 buses an hour every 7 minutes, some are 15 hours. So they're very similar in the frequency that's out there today. The difference is that faster and we'll have increased capacity because currently around 15 uses a standard bus, which is a 40-foot bus, it's about 7 seats. BRT, all buses will be articulated.
Just thinking on the traffic and safety study. So the numbers that I've cited tonight regarding the shift in traffic, east west direction, so go back 13, 14, 17 or 18. That's where we would expect in ballpark 2 to 5 vehicles per minute. The north-south streets, that's the number that I've said previously for the locations that have signalized access to Colfax, where that would be up to 50 vehicles per hour. So that's a vehicle less than, I think of how to say this, less than 1 vehicle every minute. Yeah. The safety study that we're kicking off and underway on is really addressed or is it really meant to address any of the issues that you raised about the concerns of that exist today. And that we want to try to resolve as a part of the budget of the transit implementation. Things like the ability of people to cross the street, things like the speed of people who drive on those streets, not everyone, but many people, the visibility issues, et cetera. So that's really the sort of issues that we're going to be looking at. We will continue to engage with members of the community as we study that further and have recommendations to improve the situation there. Your last question was related to whether, where there will be on-street parking with Colfax with the bus rapid transit. So to wrap up and use Nick as a segue to the curbside access kind of point of that.
Yeah, and so there is going to be parking in Colfax. A lot of the spaces that are being removed are really concentration area locations where the platforms are in the center. More basic group right for that. So some of those blocks. Out all the blocks and actually it's shown on the roll plot back here if you have questions about the location. It's still in draft state right now. But the parking spaces that are planned as part of the design are accessible throughout headquarters places with different numbers.
Okay, great. And I will just note that the key piece of feedback that Nick is looking for is the parking generators. In this area, what are the key parking generators? What are your concerns and what are your desired outcomes with curbside access? That feedback, because that can help inform some of. I want to take a moment to thank all of our panelists for taking the time to share the work that you're doing with the community and to thank all of you for taking the time to be here with us and to ask the tough questions and to have the conversation that's going to continue to help move the project forward. So in terms of next steps, you all have seen this before. We have a lot that's going on. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it. The key piece that I want you to be aware of is that we're continuing the design component and elements of the design component. The curbside access plan is a big piece. The safety analysis that we talked about is moving forward, and we're in the process of developing that small business plan, outreach and support plan. So be ready to start talking about that for the next coming months and stay engaged. All of you here in the room may be aware there's lots of ways to stay engaged. The project website is probably your best portal for all kinds of resources. You can submit questions and comments via that project website. Also, a number of community updates, so if you do not get the emails that we send, please let us know. We can put you on a distribution list so that you can get those emails. And then obviously the in-community event, so hopefully you'll see it at a number of in-community events over the next couple of months, particularly as the weather is. So, anybody have an update on the nuggets?
Yeah.
No?
I was.
Okay, well, maybe we will share that, hopefully there will. Thank you all.
41-37. Nuggets, yeah. Yeah, 6 minutes left in the second, yeah. Second.
I appreciate it.